You can write a song about love, or about a breakup, or about revenge. Or you can write a song about your Ding-A-Ling. At times, they are a changin, and these former hits just don't hit like they used to. The Rolling Stones' Brown Sugar was a smash hit in 1971, topping the Billboard Hot 100 charts, the perfect lead single for their studio album Sticky Fingers. Since then, the song has become well established as one of the band's classic cuts. It has appeared on several of the Stones' greatest hit collections and has remained a crowd-pleasing fixture of their live shows for decades.
These days, could you get away with singing Brown Sugar, Brown Sugar?
Probably not.
In 2021, the Stones announced that the song was being retired from their set lists. In a radio interview, Mick Jagger admitted that the song, which invokes images of enslavement alongside equally objectionable choruses, was written to be intentionally provocative, explaining, "The early days were the days of shock and awe. Things can't stay like that forever." While Jagger seemed resigned to the demise of Brown Sugar, Keith Richards struck a more defiant tone, telling the Los Angeles Times that he was still trying to fully understand the nature of the controversy, and that he hopes to bring the song back sometime in the future. Katy Perry's "I Kissed a Girl and Liked It" is an undeniable earworm, but its risque lyrics created a wave of pearl-clutching among certain commentators.
Well, isn't that special?
Conservative disapproval had the opposite effect on Perry's career. It actually boosted her public profile. But "I Kissed a Girl" wasn't Perry's first brush with controversy. The year before, Perry released the EP "You're So Gay," in which the title track hits hard at an X. The lyrics go, "I hope you yourself with your H&M scarf while off listening to Mozart." The refrain then doubles down, diss track style, declaring, "You're so gay and you don't even like boys." The song goes on to mock the man in question for being too skinny, too pale, too sad, and for wearing makeup.
I'm just kidding.
Though the song is arguably meant to be tongue-in-cheek, it was criticized at the time for being homophobic, and we can't in good conscience disagree. It's unlikely that using the word gay to insult a straight man would fly in a pop song today. Nevertheless, as recently as 2018, "You're So Gay" was defended by co-writer Greg Wells, who claimed to Billboard, "A lot of people didn't get the intent with which we wrote it." Amy Winehouse had already established herself long before the 2006 release of her chart-topping sophomore album Back to Black, but when Rehab hit the airwaves, her popularity exploded. The single charted in numerous countries, including the US, where it peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed in the charts for an impressive 20 weeks. Thanks in part to the song's catchy, if dark, refrain, "They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no." Few who heard the song could have imagined how central addiction would be to the rest of the Amy Winehouse story, and how publicly her drug and alcohol use would be chronicled in the tabloid press. The song tells the story of Winehouse's management team's efforts to convince her to seek treatment, which was undermined by her own father, who reportedly swallowed Winehouse's excuse that she was lovesick. Amy Winehouse died of alcohol poisoning in 2011 at the age of 27, making Rehab an uncanny precursor to her tragic final years. John Lennon was the most controversial Beatle both during his lifetime and in recent years, as problematic behavior in his private life has come under increased scrutiny. It was Lennon who arguably created the biggest crisis for the band in their 7 years together, when his claim that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus led to a widespread US boycott of their music.
If it had said television is more popular than Jesus, I might have got away with it.
In terms of songwriting, the dark side of Lennon's personality was evident early on. In the fall of 1965, at the start of the recording sessions for what would be the Rubber Soul album, Lennon arrived with the song Run for Your Life. The song was inspired by 2 lines from the 1955 Elvis Presley single Baby Let's Play House. Lennon directly lifts the lines and uses them in his song, singing, "I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than see you with another man." Gross and in bad taste at the time, for Elvis and for Lennon, but it's all kinds of wrong today. Lennon later admitted in an interview with Rolling Stone that he was dissatisfied with Run for Your Life, disowning the song. While critics have identified it as one of his artistic low points, and certainly the weakest song on the otherwise classic Rubber Soul. There's no doubt about rock and roll pioneer Chuck Berry's influence on popular music from the 1950s on. Even Marty McFly knows it, choosing Berry's 1958 classic Johnny B. Good for his prom antics in Back to the Future. But it took Berry 14 long years after his first release to hit the top of the Billboard Hot 100 charts, and when he did, it wasn't with a song of his own. Berry's biggest single was 1972's My Ding-A-Ling, a song that pretends to be about a boy ringing a bell but which is laced with innuendo throughout. You could argue that the song is just a bit of harmless fun, but Berry's recording seems far seedier today, considering revelations about his own sexual misconduct, including child trafficking in 1959, for which he served 2 years in prison, and in 1989 allegedly filming women going to the toilet in the bathrooms of a restaurant he owned, which resulted in the settlement of a class action lawsuit involving 59 women. One of the biggest songs of the early 2010s was also one of the decade's most controversial. Under the direction of super producer extraordinaire Pharrell Williams, the undeniably danceable Blurred Lines temporarily turned Robin Thicke from a forgettable Nepo baby into one of the biggest names in the world of pop, especially after his, shall we say, memorable performance of the song with Miley Cyrus at the 2013 VMAs. The song drew instant criticism for its themes, with commentators noting that the lyrics seemingly celebrated the blurred nature of the boundaries of sexual consent. And then there was the explicit music video featuring nude models, which critics nailed for being sexist and dehumanizing. Sexist or not, the song enjoyed near constant radio play in the summer of 2013 and beyond, but its themes have only become more uncomfortable in recent years.
Who wrote I Know You Want It? Was that you?
Yeah, sure.
Williams has since admitted that the song promotes chauvinistic behavior, telling GQ in 2019, "I would never write or sing it today." The song's reputation has also been damaged by claims that parts of it were plagiarized from Marvin Gaye's Got to Give It Up. Thicke and Williams were on the losing end of a copyright infringement trial and were ordered to pay millions as well as 50% of all future royalties from the song to Gaye's estate. Neil Diamond's 1967 ballad Girl You'll Be a Woman Soon is one of the best remembered songs in his oeuvre. It had a second life with younger listeners thanks to a cover version by Urge Overkill, which was prominently featured in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction back in 1994. Diamond, who was in his mid-20s when he wrote the song, described the inspiration behind it in a 2018 interview with Billboard, saying, "At the point of my career I wrote it, my audience was teenage girls. The song came out of that context." Though written supposedly to titillate his underage audience, Diamond's crooning of "Girl, you'll be a woman soon, soon you'll need a man" during the chorus sounds pretty repulsive by today's standards, implying that the narrator is perhaps waiting for the object of his affection, who's legally a minor, to reach the age of consent. And there's more. The lyrics, "Don't let them make up your mind," and "If they get their chance, they'll end it for sure," certainly sound like he's talking about the influence of a parent or two, which ups the ick factor several more degrees. Shaggy became a megastar in the late 90s thanks to his breakthrough single Mr. Bombastic, but it was his collaboration with Rick Rock, It Wasn't Me, that took the dancehall hitmaker into the stratosphere. The song, in which Rick Rock describes being caught by his girlfriend creeping with the girl next door, and Shaggy advising him to flat out deny it with the phrase, "It wasn't me," spent 2 weeks on top of the Billboard Hot 100 in February 2001. Apparently, nobody objected to the storyline of infidelity and what today might be known as gaslighting. Not that such a concept was in mainstream use around the turn of the millennium. More recently, the blockheadedness of Shaggy's advice, going down the road of pure denialism when all evidence points to the contrary, has seeped into the legal lexicon.
It wasn't you?
Hey, that was Shaggy said. It wasn't me.
In 2008, Slate journalist Josh Levine used the phrase the Shaggy defense when covering the case of R. Kelly, who was then on trial for possession of child sexual abuse material. By 2010, the phrase was being used in other legal cases outside of the world of pop, and the so-called innocence of Shaggy's Just a Joke song has been further perverted in recent years by the post-truth nature of political discourse.
Post-truth is clearly just a rip-off of my 2006 word of the year, truthiness.
Whatever you call it, denialism and misinformation are now rampant in modern life and even, frustratingly, in the mainstream media. Whether Shaggy did it or not, the song's hook is undeniably catchy and is always a good addition to a nostalgic playlist. It's usually listeners who are first to argue that music has aged badly, but in the case of the Beastie Boys, who aren't particularly well known for doing things by the book, it was actually the band members themselves who were happy to disown their early work. In particular, their breakthrough hit, 1987's You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party. As outlined in Alan Light's Skills to Pay the Bills, the story of the Beastie Boys, the band intended the song to be a joke, a parody of the frat boy hard rock that was dominating the airwaves at the time. With the rock turned up to 11 by producer Rick Rubin, however, the song had massive commercial appeal, and it was released as a single, making stars of the band. The problem was not many of their millions of new listeners were in on the joke. The trio managed to ditch their frat boy image with their kaleidoscopic sophomore album Paul's Boutique, which has gone down in history as a hip-hop classic, and the Beasties never looked back. Light notes, though, that in the sleeve notes of their greatest hits collection, The Sound of Science, they make no secret of how much they hate the song that made them famous. There are just a handful of classic songs that continue to herald the beginning of summer after more than half a century of perpetual airplay, and Mungo Jerry's 1970 hit In the Summertime is one of them. Released as the British band's debut single, the previously unknown musicians, led by the charismatic Ray Dorset, were given a huge break thanks to a fortuitous appearance at the UK's Hollywood Music Festival the week the single was released. Contrasting markedly with the heavier rock sound of the other bands on the bill, including the Grateful Dead and Ginger Baker's Air Force, In the Summertime was warmly appreciated by the festival's hippie crowd. and word of mouth helped propel it to #1 in the British singles chart. It went on to become a worldwide smash, selling an estimated 30 million copies.
So suddenly I had to ask my boss for the afternoon off work to do Top of the Pops.
While the track's joyous up-tempo vibe remains undimmed, the lyrics to In the Summertime hit a little differently nowadays. The opening verse starts out by inviting the listener to have a drink, have a drive, behavior that's strenuously discouraged in the 21st century, then go on the prowl looking for women. Dorset later makes a joke about how to date women you might pick up while driving, advising, if her daddy's rich, take her out for a meal. If her daddy's poor, you just do what you feel.